Come, let us stop struggling in meditation, the Buddha Nature Secret. Together, let us relaxingly recite. A recurring phrase in both Mahayana as well as Tantric literature is Tathagata Garbha, or Buddha nature. This charming Iron Age turn of phrase hints that enlightenment is our birthright and easily attained without requiring heroic effort or noble sacrifice. Sounds great, sign me up, but the mystery remains, how is one to realize it? One of the many advantages of living in this age is that medical professionals have access to sophisticated imaging technology of which the ancients could have never conceived. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI studies, have revealed that it is our sympathetic nervous system that is the seat of mindfulness, or sati. Our parasympathetic nervous system that is the seat of meditation, or samadhi. And our anterior cingulate gyrus that is the seat of our loving kindness, or metta. It is these structures that comprise our Buddha nature, but a villain lurks, just as the Buddha's foil was his foolish cousin, Devadatta. So too is the team of our prefrontal cortex, the seat of analysis as well as focus, and our amygdala, the seat of anxiety and aggression, but the opponents to the mechanism of our Buddha nature. Just as Jack the Ripper taught us that a surgeon's scalpel could be used to take lives as well as save them, so too could both the prefrontal cortex as well as the amygdala be abused as well as used. The solution to this dilemma is twofold. The easy method to strike the match of enlightenment already in our grasp is to allow our sympathetic nervous system to mindfully do its thing during our inhalations, and to let our parasympathetic nervous system meditatively do its things during our exhalations. Thus, sitting in formal mindfulness and meditation once every 12 hours or so, we set space to live from our empathetic anterior cingulate gyrus effortlessly and automatically. A delightful fringe benefit of this is the manner in which our choices, utterances, and deeds could begin to flow from the right or effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity, which is the key to the sustainable use of our analytical prefrontal cortex, as well as our primal amygdala. This is why the Buddha taught mindfulness and meditation. Having completed our opening lesson, come let us shift gears. It is Luke Skywalker Friday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is the Dzogchen Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests, as well as my ADHD hyperfocus, to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation, so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So for the remainder of this morning's live stream, we're going to camp out upon the latest iteration of very easy meditation practice text, or sadhana, if you're nasty. Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything and everyone sucks. What that means, what that infers, is that only 10% of us could be described as being flexible, loving, rational. Okay, let's try this again. Flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Basic mathematics teaches that 90% of all meditation teachers are going to be delighted to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, having been convinced that these are actual virtues. Therefore, it should come as a little surprise that the majority of meditation teachers implore their students to actively focus as well as analyze. Now, they have all kinds of fancy terms for this, such as samatha and vipassana. However, the only way to perform those actions is to rely upon the discrete neural pathways, such as those found in both the medial as well as dorsolateral prefrontal cortices. The problem is that overtraining this front part of our brain not only sets us up for the symptoms of depression, but it triggers our amygdala, which is the seat of the anxiety and aggression that are the opposite of the peace and the love that most of us desire, that have lured most of us into the practice of meditation. Fortunately, neither the prefrontal cortex nor the amygdala are the only components of our central nervous system. For instance, every time we inhale, we are already wired by evolution to automatically access the sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination, which open us up to a broad vista of experience, encompassing the external, the internal, the physical, the mental, the pleasurable, the painful, the interesting, the boring, the glorious, and the grotesque. Well, what are we to do with that which we notice? Every time we exhale, we have evolved to automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is divided between the lower third as well as the upper third of that same spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us to physically relax and mentally release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and even less defining. So let us gently assume a sustainable sitting position, even if our first attempt is ungainly and asymmetric, and let gravity and time do their work. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. For I check for questions approximately once every 10 or 20 minutes, or 10 or 20 minutes or so. Now, let's go for it. I guess I should mention one more thing. We've talked about the dangers of competing against our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So the most wrong button, the most efficient way for us to cooperate with them is to silently and mentally recite the phrase "this object" as during each inhalation, and to silently and mentally recite "always change" during each exhalation. Now, this is not an affirmation. We're not trying to believe anything, but simply this is an appropriate way to label that which we experience, even fleetingly, during our exhalation. Together, let us practice right now. Welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have any specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. I'm going to assume, until I know better, this is your first time hanging out with me. So here's I shall strive to quickly get you up to speed. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, including meditation teachers. It should come as a little surprise therefore, that 90% of the meditation teachers we encounter are going to sincerely implore you, or implore us, to actively focus and actively analyze. Now, the only way to do that is to rely upon the discrete neural pathways found in both the medial as well as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. The problem with that is that overtraining the prefrontal cortex, number one, leads us open to the symptoms of depression. Number two, triggers our amygdala, which is the seat of both anxiety and aggression, which are the opposite of the peace and the love that most of us want from meditation. However, it is always possible to find a minority of teachers who insist not on concentration, not on focus, but on mindfulness. You see, every time we inhale, in harmony with our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord, we are wired by evolution to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination, which leaves us open to the vast experience of all that could metaphorically cartwheel across the stage of the mind of our awareness. Everything from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. That, of course, begs the question, what do we do with that which we noticed? Simple. Every time we exhale, we have evolved to automatically access the parasympathetic nervous system, divided between the lower third and the upper third of that same spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us to both physically relax as well as mentally release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to fleetingly feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, any good English teacher will remind us that a simile is only as useful as it is relatable. So we have to ask the question, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? Simple. How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand? And so there you have it. By silently and mentally reciting the phrase, these objects, during our inhalation, and by silently and mentally reciting the phrase, always change, during our exhalation, we cannot help but effortlessly and efficiently cooperate with our sympathetic as well as parasympathetic nervous systems. And don't worry, this is not an affirmation. This is just a useful label we adhere to the involuntary changes in our perceptions that we experience during each relaxing exhalation. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist mindfulness, I'm sorry, Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I check for questions approximately once every 10 minutes or so. However, here's my request. Only write one question at a time. That way you will get the most out of it. I kid you not, some people have written like 5 questions at a time and then get very angry when I don't notice their questions because my eyes are closed and I'm meditating for 10 minutes, and there is, of course, a uh, time delay over YouTube. So I ask you to be mature and wise, and I will do my very best to answer any and all meditation questions you have. Quick reminder, distractions only exist if you're trying to concentrate. If you are completely vulnerable to whatever perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings cartwheel across your mind, then that stuff is just grist for the mill. For instance, as I speak to you right now, my brain is repeating a loop from a song recorded when I was probably a toddler in the 60s by Buffalo Springfield. And it just keeps playing it over again in a loop and a loop and a loop. And I love the song. I'm rocking out to it. But it doesn't diminish my experience of mindfulness or meditation. I think it's fun. Remember, the fourth enlightenment factor is joy. If the style in which you sit in meditation makes you cranky and uptight, then you might have taken a wrong turn. The most efficient way for us to cooperate with our sympathetic as well as parasympathetic nervous systems, which are the keys to both mindfulness and meditation, is for us to silently and mentally recite the phrase these objects during each inhalation, and for us to silently and mentally recite the phrase always change during each exhalation. These are not affirmations. They're simply labeling our experience because every time we inhale, we're wired to notice all manner of phenomena. We're wired to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. And every time we exhale, we're already wired to relax. And as we relax, that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel subtly or drastically different. And so rather than fight this, we simply label it always change. Ask a physicist or a chemist or a biologist, they'll agree everything's changing all the time. Even a geologist will agree, although their scale of change may be a little bit slower than yours and mine. Well, that's weird. What's going on here? Ah, that's what's going on. Okay. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class, as well as group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.